My name is Mimi Lee, and I am the covenant of a community group, Torontonian HongKongers Action Group. I emigrated from Hong Kong when I was 16 years old and have been living in Toronto on and off for 30 years. I consider myself as a Canadian, but for some strange reason, I'm still quite attached to Hong Kong, especially when the whole 2019 fiasco had happened.
Very left. Very left. Shame on you. Shame on you. Very left. Very left. Shame on you. Shame on you.
If you see right now how this untrustworthiness affecting them is their ways of life has totally changed. They no longer enjoy the freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and they even delisted a lot of books in Hong Kong. Like anything that you can imagine talking about or mentioning even a little bit about things that had gone wrong in China is being suppressed. So to local Hong Kongers, a lot has changed, although some of them may say, oh, it's okay or whatever. But then, for people who are having living day in and day out, voicing what they have thought all along is different. When you're just busy putting food on table, going in and out to work and go home, of course there's nothing different because you can live anywhere. But then at the end of the day is if you're not happy with what's happening, then where you go? Can you go anywhere? Or can you even talk about it? Okay, so the line of 97 is really the handover. So that was a a timeline that actually started to click, which the Chinese government did not act right away. They had slowly taken what we had along the way. Although we didn't have like full democracy in that regards, if you're talking about democracy, but we had the freedom of expression and a lot of things that we could still enjoy over the time, even after the handover. And then along the way, they impose a lot of different laws and changes and stuff like that. And of course, the most significant one was started the amendment on the extradition bill that we were talking about. And also along the way, which was the national security law as well as the Article 23, which were both passed eventually this year. This is effectively silencing the people in Hong Kong, but also everywhere, people in all nations who voices anything against the CCP will get silenced if they have friends and family still in Hong Kong. We, the people who are still talking about all these things and still not fear about them, we will not set foot in Hong Kong anymore, nor the 50 odd plus countries that are actually related closely with China. My very first activism activity was a lunch with you event outside the U of T Convocation Hall on June 12th, 2019. It was because we had been echoing the actions in Hong Kong at that time. And when we went home on June 6th and heard that the Hong Kong SAR government had no intention to stop that legislation on the amendment of that extradition bill that we were talking about, I sensed that we had to do something. And I was a board member at a nonprofit organization at that time, but the board could not confirm whether we would do anything on June 12th because the time was so short. I felt that we had not enough time if we didn't move fast enough. So I told the board I would just put up an event myself. So basically, all the original ideas on our actions were all sparked from current affairs from Hong Kong or events that related to Hong Kong. Our signature event was a t-shirt distribution outside the Scotia Arena, downtown Toronto, on the NBA opening game night in 2019. That was inspired by another Hong Konger in LA planning the same thing on the same night. As that year, NBA had opening games nights in LA and Toronto. That was actually followed by the CCP pressing the NBA after an NBA coach retweeting a protester's tweet. So that's how it all started. So it was actually quite something around the circle because NBA has been and always been a place to voice fairness and all that stuff. As a matter of fact, sports has always been political. Yeah, and because of that, we got global coverage. Right now, our group has been working loosely on projects, which still focusing on raising awareness to fellow Canadians on the issues of the CCP as well as all Chinese companies, as they are all state owned, even though they might seem to be an independent companies overseas. The severity of infiltration of the Chinese government has in Canada is also not quite widely understood. Although many reports have been published and different groups, including ours, have ran a lot of workshops on it, Canadians seems still cannot relate how that affects their daily lives. Although many people are awakened after the pandemic, but still do not connect the financial support that they are giving the CCP when they continue to buy cheap merchandise from Chinese companies or companies that are related to China. We take all chances to voice out these issues and promote buying non made in China products or simply just buy from independent retailers locally. I personally also involved in a YouTube channel that aims at conserving Cantonese as a language. It's not easy to get people's attention on things that are actually not seemed to affect their daily lives, especially after the pandemic. Inflation had gone up so much, together with rapid increases of interest rates in Canada. It has been very hard for laymen to keep things on track. People normally only care about issues that they are living in their lives. And the world has lots of other chaos that does not help either. We have the Ukraine Russian war happening for over 2 years now, as well as the war still going on in the West Bank. All these together with the financial issues and the political problems that we locally have diverted Canadians' focus from Hong Kong. With that said, our signature event that I talked about earlier was extremely successful, not only because at the time all eyes were on Hong Kong's development, but the fact that NBA itself is definitely a major sport event which helped us achieve global coverage across different platforms and different news sections. At this moment, to my understanding, a lot of Hong Kongers who had moved from Hong Kong to elsewhere in the world are busy building the new lives as well as adapting to the new environment they put themselves in. This is also the reason discounted our efforts and resources. A lot of us right now trying to not just raising awareness to their own local government on the effect of CCP is having on the westernized world, we are also trying very hard to keep the passion, the heat, the fire inside our fellow Hong Kongers globally. And you can say just to wait for another chance so that we can come back and do something bigger, something more impact to what's happening right now. Other than raising awareness among Canadians over the harm CCP is doing over to the westernized world, we want to save Canada from China's plan on taking over the world. Specifically, when Canada has so much natural resources, China wants many of that for sure. I personally feel that the attempt on forming a foreign interference transparency registry, as well as the hearing on the current ongoing public inquiry into the foreign interference in the federal elections, especially the one in 2021, um, all these are not getting their deserved attention right now. As a matter of fact, I can see that we are heading towards the road that Australia had gone through, which they had already lost a lot of their things to China. And we would not want to see Canada going on the same route. Oh, if you actually look at what was going on in the last probably 5, 10 years, along the way, they have sold a lot of things to Chinese companies. We are actually heading the same direction. In terms of lobbying the government, because the government, we all know that they are very close to the Chinese government. As a matter of fact, like in the last decade, anything to do with China, you have not seen concrete actions against China. It's always lip services. So I don't know whether we still want to waste our resources to do lobbying with the government. Although, of course, we have just a handful of MPs still talk about all these things against China, but the government itself as a whole is pro Beijing. We know that for a fact.